Hello, everybody. Welcome. Sam, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you too, Dave.
I'm going to flip this around so we can start talking to everybody. We got one more message for you. And we're going to go live and start chatting about two very interesting topics, persuasion and influence. And tangentially, we're also going to talk a little bit about manipulation. Oh yeah, we do have the sun changing directions.
Yes.
Let me see here.
Turn that
Slide over here. Tucker, you're going to have to let Sam in. It's all the best laid plans. I don't know, we're still in the sunlight. We're going to keep moving around till you guys can see us properly. We've got a big pile of books and things for you. Let's see if this will do the trick.
We'll just have the liquor in the background.
The liquor that none of us actually drink. Oh, we do have a weird, like a sort of freakishly weird snowman collection in the background
Yeah.
too. Tucker senses whenever television is going live.
She wants to be a part of it. Or he wants to be a part of it.
So today we have a really interesting topic for you. It's sort of a gigantic, almost a mega topic, but we want to introduce the idea in top form. We want everybody to start thinking about how you become, because this does put your life in top form, when you become way more persuasive. And then Sam and I are going to talk to you today about how you apply this in your business and your life. Sam's been reading a really good resource on the business side of this, and I have some expertise in the area of persuasion and influence generally, and we want to make a distinction between being persuasive and being influential, and we also want to come right out of the box and talk about manipulation as well. Hey, Dave Braxton has joined.
Hey, Dave.
Welcome, Dave. We're gonna have to get Dave to come in as a guest sometime.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll have to think about exactly what it is that we want him to talk about. He's doing some pretty cool things at Braxton, so he can. Maybe you could talk about one of those. Oh, I see you've joined, Sam.
I'm glad to be here.
Good to know.
Yeah.
This will give us a chance to.
I mean, it didn't really happen if it wasn't on Facebook, right?
That's right. And by the way, Alex, our co-host, will be joining us next weekend. Hey, Dave. So he'll be back. He is currently in Kansas City and was recently in Phoenix, Arizona, but he is on his way back. So looking forward to having him back in the seat. Once again, being in top form means being persuasive, cultivating persuasion, ultimately building influence. We're going to talk a little bit about the difference between those two things. I'm surprised Alex hasn't weighed in to tell us that the snowman collection is super creepy.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he will at some point.
He'll scold us eventually.
There's a lot of scolding. We were about to hold up signs that were reversed, and Sam observed, Alex, that you would probably
berate us.
Berate and punish us for that, yeah. So we're going to start by talking about what the definitions of persuasion and influence are, and talk a little bit about the concept of manipulation. So I make a distinction, Sam, between being persuasive and being influential, and you may agree or disagree with this distinction, but I make the following distinction. Persuasion, I think of as doable. You could get people to come around and see things from your perspective, or to consider ideas they had never considered before, and maybe change their mind about a decision they were going to make, or accept the suggestion you're making.
Right.
And we're going to show you how to do that. We're going to explain the strategies of people who are really good at persuasion. We'll also explain and discuss the tactics, which is what everybody wants to hear. You know, everybody wants like the magic little expression.
Right.
And we had one actually when we started this. We were holding up a sign that said, "Persuasion, it's not what you think, right?" Question mark. And so we'll explain what's going on in there. So we're going to talk. Ooh, we got a little like on that one. One of the tricks. Everybody loves the little tricks of persuasion. So yes, it can be done. There are better ways and worse ways to do it, but it's pretty much hard work. And there's a return on investment. You're spending your time persuading people. Whereas when you become influential, that to me means that you're having an influence on other people's thinking and life sort of more automatically, meaning that they're turning to you when they have a question about how they should do something.
Right.
Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to that too. I mean, you can have people turning to you all the time, and then you become their problem solver. So if that's your business to sell them the solution to your problem, that's probably a pretty good thing.
Right.
If you are running the business and you're the leader, that's not such a good thing. You want to make a distinction there because you want to get people to learn how to solve their own problems and to assume a leadership position
And
within your organization.
you could say that that's even the next level of influence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if we could kind of make this a sequential type of thing, which isn't necessarily.
That's where you're neither, at the start over here where I am, you're neither persuasive nor influential. And you don't have the skills to do either.
So you need to persuade somebody to, let's say, read your ebook.
Mm-hmm.
And then that will establish some sort of credibility that they will then start coming back to you for more information. Once you establish that authority and credibility, now you might have a certain level of influence.
Larry Weinstein has just joined us. Larry, I have a book from Leonard Moldenau on the science of all this that is autographed by him to me, and that was a gift from you, so thank you very much. So you'll recognize that at some point when we start talking about that. So Sam, I agree with you. Over at this end of the spectrum, I'm not influential, I'm not persuasive, I don't know how to do it. Then we have the herky-jerky where you learn to be persuasive, it's still hard, then you get better at it. Finally, you're persuasive, and now as you say, by being persuasive, you can lay the groundwork for being influential.
Right.
And when eventually you persuade people a few times, because you're careful to find out, like if you're my customer and I find out, Sam, what is it that you really need? And I say to you, maybe the first or second or third time you come to me for a solution, you know what? I don't have the best solution for that thing you need.
Right.
You should go over here. Now I'm influential to you because I've persuaded you and treated you with respect, and I've given you information that's in your best interest, not necessarily mine.
So would you agree that, you know, a key difference, not necessarily an exclusive difference, but one of gradients is if you have influence, you necessarily have more trust.
Yes.
You've earned more trust.
Yes.
Than just persuasion alone.
Yes, and persuasion is persuasion used to benefit yourself rather than the other person will not build trust.
Right.
But persuasion used, especially consistently, to better the other person's situation. And so you're going to be looking for people where there's a synergy there.
Right.
And you do something for them that they really need and they recognize that. Consistently doing that is going to build real influence.
Right.
And then as you say, in the first sort of stage of influence, and with the customer, you want them to come to you looking for solutions and answers. But maybe a more advanced form of influence is getting employees, team members, and maybe even clients and customers at some point to become more creative in their own problem solving, and that they turn to you ultimately maybe for your highest margin products and services,
Right.
and they refer other people.
And I think that there's a key thing there too, is it's, you know, we're talking about persuasion. It's not just for clients and customers. It's for your team. It's for the people that you work with.
Yeah.
And for you, it can be a very useful skill set for you to have.
Ms. Halper just joined us. Hello. Oh, Angela Siktar joined.
All right.
Yeah.
We're honored.
I like when Angela comments because they're always biting and yet with love.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way your mom does it. I don't mean your mom, just everybody's mom. Sort of
Moms in
generically.
general.
Moms in general, yeah. I mean, that'd be kind of creepy.
That would be weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's like a mom, kind of a little complimentary, and at the same time keeping us in our place.
That's right.
And I hear we've been getting feedback, so we have to, hi, how are you? We have to ask the audience. We've been told that we should, quote, lose the beards.
Yeah.
Because we're attracting a, quote, creepy bearded man audience, which I believe like the people who are attending would not fall into that category. Yes. We have attractive, powerful
Look, we're
men
all
and
about
women.
data.
Yeah.
And the data is bearing out that we should keep the beards.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is. But we're happy to take comments pro or con beard. And yours is more of a lush beard, whereas mine is kind of inspiring to the man that has the thin beard.
Yes.
They say, he says, look, there's a handsome, powerful man, Dave Fries, and yet his beard is sort of wispy almost. So, I object. Objection.
I'm not sure what she's objecting to.
Yeah, we might need a little clarification on that. Are you objecting to the shaving of the beards, to the beards,
Yeah.
to our suggestion that we have a powerful and attractive female audience? Are you objecting to that? we were going to get some clarification.
It's just general objection.
It's just objection. This is all objectionable. It's objectionable. Like, where here is just a minor objective, since we're on the spectrum today, and out here is an objection where, like, they call the police to come in and stop this.
That's
now.
right.
You know, by the way,
no
Larry,
silence,
David, and Sam, you are both powerful and attractive men. Of course, we get that from Larry. No offense, Larry, we appreciate it, but it didn't come from, you know, any of the
Well, here we
female
go.
audience.
Here we
go. I'm a female and enjoy the beard.
Very
there
good.
you go.
Very good.
Okay, well, we like that. So this is strong. We have men and women weighing in that we're both
Favoring the beard.
and or that we're attractive, and we like all of that. So, yes, we
Wonderful.
forgot. So this is a big part of persuasion. We're going to now model it for you. So one of the things that always helps us, and by the way, thank you very much. We got, I think we're coming up on 3,000 views of last week's show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so thank you. And that is because you guys are sharing it. So when we post this today, and then we're going to get to Angela's comment. When we post this today, we would really love it if you would share it with either on your own wall or with somebody that could use these kinds of persuasion skills and skills of influence. So we're going to get back in a second to this idea of manipulation and why we should think of all of this as being manipulative, actually, which is counterintuitive. But first, if you're coming in and you like anything that we are saying or talking about or any of the topics, let us know also by liking and loving. Yes, there you go. Thank you so much. Because that helps with the algorithm. It lets Facebook know that we're saying things that are interesting and funny. And then Braxton jumped in with one, too. Very nice. Now, Braxton, does he have the goatee? He's
still
usually
does.
kind of a goatee
He's
man.
keeping the goatee.
It has come and gone in the past. So what's Angela say? Angela says, this is the type of high-level stuff I have come to expect.
So there's that complimentary and biting.
We aim to please. Was that you or Alex? Okay. Yes, Alex may be on and may be joining us remotely. We're going to be bringing you fairly soon the ability to join us virtually and also to give you some fancier production values so we don't have to get up and stagger around with the shot at the start because we misjudged the sun.
It's like it keeps going around every day.
And we're scientists. We have a scientific mind, and yet we somehow ignore the fact that the sun moves.
Yeah.
I'm one of those flat earthers.
Well, yeah, me too.
Okay, good. So now we've established that. You can trigger, if you make fun of flat earthers, you can, so I don't know that I've seen anybody joining us that falls into the flat earth category, but that could create quite a backlash, but that would probably be good for us.
Well, you have to segment your audience.
You do. So that's something about persuasion too. Angela is all about the flat earthers. So here's a couple of things that we're doing. When we ask you to share this and to like it or love it or to comment, we are attempting, like, sort of discreetly to be persuasive, right? But notice that we don't just ask you to do it one time. We're repeating it over and over again because people come and go from these things. They see it later. And what we found is it's very interesting that it's nice to have a bigger audience because you get a big exchange.
Right.
And Facebook likes it because they know a bunch of people have hopped on. But it's really important when people like and share it. That's what makes the difference in getting the word out to everybody. So once you've identified some of the things that make a difference, look, think about how am I going to be persuasive and influential and get people to do it. And typically that involves saying it and demonstrating it and showing people what you want them to do more than once. Because asking once, they'll say, oh yeah, I'll do that, or I'm busy right now. But when you do it more than a few times, and again, in a way that's not designed to be obnoxious. So here, we're blunting the obnoxiousness by using it as a sample of the thing that we're talking about.
And it's important that, people have a clarity of purpose. So they have, the purpose of sharing this is a lot of your, companions could benefit from the information that we're talking about today, but you also need a clear path of how to do it.
Yep.
Right? So we're kind of sharing the way to share this, or make sure that this information gets out to people who could really benefit from it, is through likes and shares and using Facebook as a vehicle for that.
Beautiful. So one of the things that crops up when I talk about these things, about being more persuasive and more influential, when I talk about it in front of an audience, there's a point at which I can pretty much predict it in the way that I do the program. There's a point at which somebody stands up in the audience and actually says, because I've been inviting this, wow, this is hideously manipulative, and you're like a terrible human being. And I love when that happens, and if it doesn't happen, I just tell the story of it happening before, which is another important thing to remember, is if you're trying to be persuasive and you have a story or some kind of a demonstration that you want to trigger and it doesn't happen, be prepared to tell the story of another time it happened, because then you get your persuasive story in there. So here's why I explained that, yes, it is manipulative, but all human communication is at its essence manipulative in some way.
I agree.
So, like when I called you to say, can we roll this to 3 today from 1 because I'm coming up from DC, I didn't just call you up in an angry tone of voice and tell you we were doing it. Right. I asked you if it was okay. I had a reason. There's a number of scientific studies, by the way. One is discussed by Cialdini in his book Influence, or what is that called? Yeah, Influence.
Influence is the original, yeah.
And Cialdini tells the story of how they had people lined up at a photocopier, and a person would come and butt into the front of the line and say, can I make these photocopies? And most of the time people would say, no, you can't. You get to the back of the line. But if he or she came up and said, can I make these photocopies because I have to make copies? They use the word because. The human brain is already got a greased slide that when somebody asks you something and has a reason, that it's more okay to say yes to that.
Right.
So, I mean, we want to use manipulation. Here's why. We want to entertain someone. We want to educate someone. We want to enjoy time with them, whatever it might be. We want to chastise them, whatever the reason is. We might have a positive reason for having to chastise somebody.
Right.
We want to get a result. And as long as our intention is good, that we're doing something that's good, not just for us, but for them, let's communicate and persuade in a way that's like efficient and effective, not super hard to do.
Right, and not unnecessarily antagonistic.
Right, and manipulation. So manipulation has this strongly charged and negative quality to it. And I guess what we're saying is, so we're inoculating you against something. If you start to think, wow, this sounds hideously manipulative, we don't want you to turn off to this. We want you to go, oh, well, because, the reason why is all human communication is manipulation.
Right.
And if I'm doing this for the right reasons, then it is okay and it's appropriate. Yes, to be used for good, not for evil, Somnath. That's a warning. And there's another shot over the bow.
Really?
This is the high-quality commentary, though, that we have come to expect and love from Angela.
Now, am I in parentheses because
I was
you're
wondering
suggesting that I might use it for evil? Or are you just citing me because that's what I've told you?
I also think that she was making a distinction, like Psalm. Like she didn't have to give me that warning.
Okay.
So again, we're doing something here that is persuasive and manipulative, but for a good reason. We want you to learn the strategies of really great communicators and the tactics of really great communicators and persuaders and how to be more influential. And if you start to think these things are manipulative and that manipulative is negative, then you're not going to do them because you're a good person, right? So we are inoculating against that so that you can realize that almost everything that you say and do is an attempt to be manipulative in some way. Just working on my manipulation. Well, she has very carefully honed skills.
Yes, very effective. But I think it also goes back to that idea of intent. When we're talking about manipulation or persuasion in the professional sense, we're talking about getting our product or service in front of more people or to the right people and get them to engage in what we're doing.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So if
I'm
you
moving
truly,
these while you talk.
no problem. If you truly believe what you're doing is a good, ethical purpose, like teaching martial arts for people to benefit their health and their children and build confidence, there's nothing unethical about using certain techniques to quote unquote manipulate or persuade people to try that service. So where do you decide to draw the line? Like, what I'm doing is a good thing, so then why isn't the tool to get more people to do it also a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, if by ignoring the easy and better way, because remember, persuasion is hard anyway. Mr. Braxton has a comment for us. But persuading people and getting them to act differently or in a different way than they have been is very difficult. So let's try to do it in the ways that are most likely to be successful.
Right.
And you and I have talked about this before, I think, the biology of why that's so difficult. Humans love being in homeostasis.
Right.
And if you want the fuller explanation of what we're about to tell you, you could just Google Perry Marshall and Dave Freeze, because I was working with Perry one day and he stopped me while I was saying this to a group of people we were with and said, repeat that again, and recorded it. So just Google Perry Marshall and Dave Freeze. And here's the biological evolutionary reason why. When you found a dry cave where there was, some water and you were safe and you could build a fire and you were not grappling with all the saber-toothed tigers that were outside of the cave, you found out that that was pretty safe. But then eventually you had to go back out and get some food. And so the caveman Bob that would go out to get the food, frequently you just hear like roaring and tearing, and Bob would never come back. Some blessedly brief screaming. And screaming gets some love. But what happens is that we as humans learn that once we have a place where we're largely safe and have a little bit of food and water, we're pretty happy. We try not to break out of that. So the brain is programmed by millions of years of evolution not to want to change and to exaggerate the danger that it senses all around us. So, think about how hard it is sometimes to get yourself even to do something like go out in the cold and fuel Alex's car, for example. So when he comes back from Kansas, there's some gas in it that maybe you used up. It's just saying.
Just a hypothetical.
Just a hypothetical situation. It's very hard to get yourself to do that because it's cold out there and you'll have to spend money and it's Alex's car, not mine. So, just saying. So, if it's hard for you, don't expect everybody else to make it easy. Somebody who's happy that Alex is out
there's
gas.
the idea that there's resistance to everything that we do. And in order to break that resistance, you need a good reason to step out.
Exactly. And so this is where persuasion comes in, and this is where using it. This is why you have to use these skills if you're going to sell something or live happily with another person.
That's right.
I mean, everybody listening has had an experience where they have built sudden rapport with somebody, and everybody else, mainly the women listening, and we know there are many of them beard lovers.
That's right.
Who have had this experience. Even when you ask the man in your life or a man in your life, and you can slide over here some if that sounds good.
So nice.
We know.
We're just going to keep rotating around the table.
Because there's this whole thing that we just did not understand about the sun moving.
Much like the earth goes around the sun.
It's just, no, well, that's not true. It's a flat earth.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going to throw Copernicus to the wind.
Now, what's Dave say here? Every time you say hideously manipulative, the likes and loves peak. That is an accurate observation.
That's very telling about our audience.
It really is. Yeah. By the way, we are not going to, Sam has chastised me before for overloading you with bibliography. So we're not going to talk about each and every one of these, but this is just a sample of about 10 feet of books on persuasion in my library. And here's the good news. All of the persuasion shows we're going to do in Top Form on various approaches to persuasion and influence, we're going to be taking all of this and kind of condensing it into a series of shows for you. So we're going to take the best out of all of these things. And here's something else. I have found, and Sam, I think you have too, that often the best books on persuasion or the best articles of persuasion or the best examples of persuasion you see in a TED Talk or something are not specifically the things discussed here, but are things you notice are persuasive to you or you notice are persuasive to your audience. So Brian Slater just joined. So Sam and I don't, even though we know the people who buy from us pretty well and are pretty careful to be constantly asking them questions about what it is that they want and that they need from us, so that we can be responsive to that and detect early when that's changing, which it does. Even though we know them, we don't, and we know how to reach them, we realize, one, that changes, and two, their particular needs may change from time to time.
Right.
So like, we were not reaching our audiences by social media 8 years ago, and we weren't reaching them by live 3 months ago.
That's right.
But now we do. So this process of being persuasive is largely a process of noticing when something in an advertisement or in a video or in a TED talk or in something you read persuaded you, it got you to change your opinion or come around to a different way of looking at things. Notice how they did that. And one of the things that you will often find is that there is a story embedded in there, even if it's a brief one. For example, I don't know if we talked about this or not, but there was this mattress brand, Sleepy's, right? So I'm not a big television watcher, so I've seen it maybe once or twice. There's an ad now that says Sleepy's was a great brand, but it went to bed and it woke up as Mattress Firm or whatever the new.
Okay.
I noticed that brand change everywhere I go now. But it was that little story about the thing going to bed as one brand and waking up as another better brand.
Yeah, and we're talking about mattresses.
Mattress Firm.
But they were able to anthropomorphize the brand of mattresses.
Yeah.
Like it went to bed and woke up, and you know, when you think of yourself going to bed, you think like, oh, I was tired, and you wake up refreshed as a new person.
Exactly.
There's something like enlightening or revelatory about a new day. When you wake up, you get a new chance to start the day, and a new set of things to do. And
weirdly, by the way, I often notice this brand in the morning. I was at a wedding the other day, and it was New Year's Eve, so we didn't get to bed till some ungodly hour in the morning. And then there was a fire at the hotel, so we had to evacuate, including the bride, who was like, I have a picture of her lit up by the flashing lights of the fire engines.
Crazy.
But the first thing I noticed when I came out of that hotel was there was one of these Mattress Firm stores there. So what all of these things have in common is that they're taking an already, what Alex calls greased slide in the brain. Like that story, as you said, has built into it. You go to sleep, you wake up refreshed.
Right.
And they've taken that and applied that to a brand. Just so anytime we could do that and we can use a story or a pre-existing experience, then we should. Larry, oh, great work. Okay. Revelatory. Really? No, I didn't even notice that you snuck that in there. Thank you, Larry. Yeah. So we are going to talk about a few of these resources since they're backwards to you and mixed in with the like frightening. The Snowman collection looks like seasonal here.
Right.
But in that shot, it looks like something out of a creepy Halloween show.
Yeah.
It's very weird. So you have, let's start with some resources. You recently read, or are in the process of reading, Pink's book, right?
Yeah, I'm about 2/3 of the way through it. Right?
So let's talk a little bit about that,
Sure.
Because that is taking this idea generally of being more persuasive and building influence, and specifically talks about how we can do it in our businesses and professional practices and things. But we're going to cycle back at the end before we leave and talk to you a little bit about how you take the things in Pink's book and the things that we have for you and some specific resources for you and how you apply them in your personal life as well.
So Daniel Pink's book that we're talking about right now is called To Sell is Human. And the basic thesis of the book is we're all involved in selling, even if our, you know, the title of our profession isn't sales.
Right.
And, you know, he does a lot of surveys and research and kind of aggregates that data and comes up with these theories. And that idea of selling or persuasion has that quick negative connotation, right? So when he asked people...
Interestingly, by the way, influence doesn't.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Yeah, but when he asked people, sorry.
You know, when they think of a sales or a salesperson, they always respond with a male used car salesman type of avatar. And, you know, we all kind of have these like negative connotations about the used car salesman because of that inherent risk. It's a used car that might not be bad, but am I getting a lemon or am I getting a good deal?
And somehow we attribute that to the salesman who has to use all kinds of brutal techniques to get us to actually buy because there's this risk there.
Exactly. And that is also like historically, the availability of information has been all with the seller, not with the buyer. And the world is changing because of technology and increased availability of information, and also how our mindsets have changed about selling. You know, so for example, one of the most tightly guarded things about
Welcome, Tara.
like martial arts memberships was the price.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, like we used to learn all these deflective phone scripts. If somebody asked the price, just ignore the question. This is like all standard kind of selling things. But people have changed the way they look at making a purchase. And most people know what we charge before they even call us.
Mm-hmm.
So that symmetrical nature of information has kind of changed what selling is all about. And now you can be comfortable of knowing, like, if I'm trying to sell or persuade someone, I'm not trying to pull one over on them. They have just as much, if not more, information than I do. And it's about steering them to come over to my side.
Now, you raise a really, really, really interesting point, because in your example, the person calling has self-selected as a client. They sort of know what it costs, maybe even from your own marketing.
Right.
So the ones that aren't willing to pay that based on what they know, they aren't even calling you.
That's right.
And the good news is, in your market, you have enough people that recognize the value of that, probably from some persuasion, from some things that you've done to indoctrinate them before they call, that's not an objection anymore. They just want to make sure they're going to get their money's worth. They know what you're charging. They want to make sure that they're going to get. And by the way, if you just give people what they consider to be their money's worth, you have failed them.
That's right.
They may stay as a customer, but they may not. But when you give them something that has a much greater perceived value from them, that may be easy for you to deliver, you've succeeded. But here's the thing: is a lot of times when people call us, so I am running a trusted estates practice. Mm-hmm. They have a sense of what the market is, and they think it's $200 to $800 for will and durable power of attorney, because they'd spend a little bit less than that on LegalZoom or some other service online, and they expect to spend a little bit more with a human being. So we have to be really careful about that, because what we do is so completely different.
Yes.
And if we let the discussion of price dominate before we've been able to explain the value of what we do to people, they may reject it without really understanding what it is that they're rejecting. So you're right. As information has become more prevalent, the game has shifted to how you frame the perception of that information.
Well, and I think that's where the importance of persuasion comes in. So even if someone calls me about price, mm-hmm. and they don't have an idea, or they already do have an idea, a lot of times people are asking us about price because they don't know what else to ask.
Right.
So they call, how much does it cost?
Yep.
Right.
And when that's the first question, if you just answer it, you run the risk that if they don't understand all the rest of the things.
So we will give you the price, but it's a matter of steering the conversation and finding out what this person is really looking for and mm-hmm. creating a relationship. You might call that manipulation, mm-hmm. but really what I'm doing is creating a pathway for this person to get the information that they really need. Mm-hmm. If somebody's calling me, a mom is calling me, and they're saying, hey, how much does it cost?
Oh, wow, somebody's really lighting it up.
And
whoever that is, thank you. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
That's Alex, I think. Alex may have showed up big time. Alex is in the house now. So
appreciate it, Alex.
Thank you. So Alex is demonstrating. By the way, we're going to talk about ways to show up and demonstration, and Alex is demonstrating for everybody what we want you all to start doing whenever you hear anything that you like. And he's loving it and liking it too, which is nice. Mixing it up. This is Ty Crandall level stuff right here.
He is. He's challenging Ty's status right now.
He's throwing the gauntlet down pretty much to everybody.
Yeah.
So I love that. And for anybody that has people that are calling or that you're talking to about price and loving it again, just remember that there's a distinction between deflecting price because you don't want to talk about it,
right,
and saying, hold on, we're going to talk about price in just a second, but I want to make sure you understand what we do, and we want to make sure that we're a good match for you.
That's right.
Tell us about what you need. Now, also understand they may not know, but when somebody calls up and says, I'm thinking about training in martial arts, and Alex is really going to, and wait, I think I saw some others in there too. Yeah, so this is fantastic. Thank you. So, I think when you say, what is it that you want, or if they're asking for price, they kind of at some level, because they're fearful of making a change that would require them to give up, like an evening or two of their week or whatever it might be. They say they want to be fit, but they don't necessarily want to do all the things that are required to become fit.
Right.
So if you give them price without context and value, it's easy for them not to act. It's that thing we were talking about in evolution again. Oh yeah, there we go. I think I saw Angela in there too. Very good.
Nice.
So just remember that if you've got people answering your phones for you, that they are probably not aware of this thing that we're talking about.
Right.
And it might make sense to go back and revisit this. And we actually record calls, which of course people calling in are told that, so that we can hear how people are handling that.
Yeah.
And recently someone came to work for us who is great. And she was at one time in her career a 911 dispatcher.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things we ask her is like, well, how do you like to receive feedback and training, and how do you know when you're doing a good job and not? What's a respectful way to do that? So we're laying the groundwork there to be persuasive and influential with her, because we want to make sure we know. And she said, well, look, I was a 911 dispatcher. There, you just had to listen to the call, and then you knew if you did a good job or not. So very interesting stuff there. It's just exploding. Alex is unrelenting, and in the best possible way of the word unrelenting. Brian, Slater, and Angela are helping. Oh, very nice. Thank you, Brian. Thanks, Angela. And thanks, Alex. This is fantastic. So let's carry on. So anybody in business has to be careful of price and value, has to be careful that they know sort of in a big general way who's going to be coming to them that they want to work for. And then more specifically, has built into their process to find out from people who are prospecting them, well, what is it they really need?
Yeah, so from a real tactical sense, it is a way of dealing with the price question and the potential price objection. But more generally, the copy that we try to write, or the sequences we put together, is handling those objections in advance, right? And again, you can call all of this persuasion or manipulation, but we are trying to find out what the person really needs or what they want.
And how do you find out what their objections are? So you want to handle them in advance. Now you're like me, you've been doing this for a long time, so you kind of know. They continue on, they're fantastic. We have the best viewers.
We really do. Thank you. Part of it is data and experience. So when we, in our sales process, when we do get no's, we find out why, and it goes into a spreadsheet. And we're literally tracking that data of what are the most common objections over time.
And we sort of debrief about that a few times a year. And again, I'll just emphasize to everybody that they change through time.
That's right.
Maybe because our audience is changing a little bit, and maybe because they're more sophisticated, or maybe their needs are changing, or something changed in the marketplace.
Or our own processes have changed.
Yep.
If we found that we are getting the price objection at the time of sale at a very high rate, well then probably we maybe didn't do a job of pre-qualifying the customer on price early enough in the sales funnel.
You're getting some light there, so I think we may need to move around again. Oh yeah, I think you're out of the sun now. No, maybe not.
Of course.
This is kind of exciting for everybody, though.
Yeah, we're getting a... Well, so this is our first 360 live, low tech.
Yes! So there we go. Let's see how that works.
It's not the sun. Very close.
So again, we're talking at a pretty high strategic level, but we also want to give you some specific resources and some tactical examples. So one of the things that we held up at the start of this was persuasion. It's not what you think, right? So what's going on there? Because anybody could use this example we were giving you with your clients or prospects. So we've used a word which is kind of emotionally charged, persuasion, and then we said it's not what you think. This is sort of the equivalent of the headline, what if everything you knew about persuasion was wrong? And you could find out what's right and start getting it working for you right away. And then we used a tag question. We said right. So a lot of times when you're saying something to someone that maybe they accept or maybe they don't, if you say X, Y, and Z are true, right? Or X, Y, and Z are true, aren't they? It's called a tag question. So it gets people thinking about whether or not they accept that thing that you've told them.
Right.
That's really useful data. So whether they do or they don't, using the expression persuasion, it's not what you think, right, or X, Y, and Z is true, aren't they?
Right.
Are true, aren't they? You're going to see whether or not someone believes you or not. And oftentimes they'll say to you, right. And you'll see that. Sometimes they say it with that questioning inflection, like as though it's dawning on them that it is true. And another response could be, well, is it? Is that right or not? Well, you just got really good data there that you might have further to go with them.
And not just the data, is you've gotten them to be, lower that first barrier and actually think about your statement, right? So you could have said persuasion is blank, 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 and just 3 things that it is. And then the audience or whoever heard that statement may or may not have agreed, and they would have moved on. Then you could have said persuasion, it's not what you think. And then you could have moved on.
But you would have no idea
right.
whether they were accepting that or
not. So it's having that request for acknowledgement at the end that really ties it all together.
And more often than not, what happens with a tag question is that it triggers acceptance. Because it's because I need to make some copies because, or can I get in front of the line because I need to make some copies? That's nonsensical.
Right.
And yet the data showed that way more people allowed you to do that. It's using that greased slide. And the greased slide is when somebody says right to you, you're just way more likely to agree. And then you've actually accepted those things that they put before that.
Right.
Now again, hideously manipulative, which as we have observed frequently causes lots of liking. Yes, useful if you're being careful that you're taking someone through a way of thinking that's useful and important to them and letting them make distinctions. So what do we have there? Can you see what that says?
Katie is saying, Dave, your hair looks amaze balls. Just saying.
Katie, you missed the, I'm not even sure Angela saw the beard polling that went on.
No, I think she missed it.
So there are more women online. We have a viewer posed a question or a suggestion.
Yeah.
Quote, lose the beards because you're attracting a creepy male bearded audience.
Yeah.
But anecdotally, the response when we asked the powerful and attractive women in our audience whether that was true or not, we got an almost universal keep the beards.
That's right.
And also Larry weighed in positively on our male attractiveness. So,
and that means a lot coming from Larry.
It does. So one of the things that one of the resources I wanted to call everybody's attention, see that coach, well there's 2 books, the top one and that one, the coaching habit. What are you leaving mine out for? It's crazy. What you just did is crazy. That doesn't even make sense. Some reached up and did get the book I was asking about, by the way, but then left my book on this very topic, like this lying there. Like it was a dirty, something that you found on the street and wanted to avoid. You even leaned back from it, I thought.
Reeled a little bit.
One of the things that Sam and I have found to be highly persuasive, not just in how we use these language patterns in business, but just personally too, I have 2 good books for you on that. One is The Coaching Habit, Say Less, Ask More, and Change the Way You Lead Forever. This is a masterful book on persuasion because it's the best kind of persuasion and influence we were talking about, where you're getting the other person to do it to themselves, to persuade themselves and to come around and do the heavy lifting of persuasion for you. And it's just a very dense resource. I know it's going to be backwards, so we'll just hold it up this way. It's a little book, really simple, and it's the best sort of stuff because it's just simple little, very strategic tools that allow you to get a lot done. And then The Language of Parenting. So this is kind of a book on how spies and interrogators and hostage negotiators are more persuasive over to raise their kids. But this is arranged to talk in a couple chapters about the strategies, which is like the mindset of people who are really persuasive, and we're going to talk about those in a second, and then the tactics. So let's talk about the mindset for a second. One of the things that you and I have both noticed in as an observation about ourselves and then people who work for us or with us is that people who are very flexible tend to be the best leaders and the best innovators and the best persuaders and communicators. Right. And people who just remain, I think this is the best way I heard this expressed was by Michael Stanier, who is the author of this book, The Coaching Habit. He said that being able to be a coach, and I would say being persuasive, is remaining curious about the other person, what they're saying. Just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I mean, the longer we could do it and not just charge ahead and offer our solutions and offer our view of what to do, the better, because people come around. And he has questions in here, as I do in my book, that are as simple as saying, and, question mark. So when people get to the end, I went to a doctor. I rarely go to the doctor, but I had 2 weird health things all happen in the same year. I had a terrible back thing and I had another thing. And I went to this doctor and he said, so tell me why you're here. And I do this in my own practice. And I told him, and he said, and what else? And then I found myself telling him of like 5 or 10 more minutes. I mean, it was the most amazing thing. And so whether you're talking to prospects, existing clients or customers, people that have been referred to you, to your team, to people that are important to you in your personal life, just remaining a little bit more curious about what's important to them and what they're trying to solve and what they really want and need. And remember something else that we said a few weeks back. People will lie to you about what they want.
Yeah.
Because they're lying to themselves.
Well, I see that all the time is, I will ask my students about what their goals are, and they will tell me, since the beginning of 2017, what they think I want their goals to be.
Or what their parents have said if they're younger, or what their spouse has said.
And it's not really...
Sorry, Angela.
It's not really what they want to accomplish.
Beard power.
And then they're not committed to those goals. So it's part of our responsibility as coaches and instructors, teachers, mentors, whatever you call us, is to use the right amount of persuasion to draw out what they're really looking for.
And I would say, even when they stop telling us the story they've been told by everybody else and start telling us their own story, the first version of that is still usually not what they want.
Yeah.
So like years ago, when I was learning hypnosis, when I was in college as a therapeutic tool, people would say, like, I want to stop smoking. That would be the first level of lie, which is that they were told by other people to stop smoking. They didn't really want to stop smoking at all. Then when we found out what it was that they really wanted, it was a pale reflection of what it was that would be motivating to them. And you had to just keep digging deeper and asking, well, how would your life be better or different if that happened? Oh yeah? Why? And those techniques are very, 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 very powerful to you. We've got a few more minutes, so I want to do something which is tickle some things that we'll get into in more detail. We could have a show on each and every one of these things, and we will. So remember, in top form is not about a particular thing. It's how to put your life in top form in so many different ways. So this year we will have shows on cooking. Next week, by the way, let's tickle next week's show. I love using the word tickle. I see that is enjoyed by the audience as well. Our co-host,
as expected.
Yes. We haven't mentioned anything particularly violent. They do seem to love any discussion of alcohol. I think we've alluded to weed before, and they seem to like that.
Yes, definitely.
So there you go, the weed lovers. Anything involving very white Celtic people, they were highly responsive to, for reasons we still don't know. Well, that's Braxton probably, with a super white Celtic person. And I mean, that's the pot calling the kettle white. But we have shows coming up for you on travel. Alex and I are preparing for a little adventure. And so we're going to show you some of the things we do to travel. I mean, I had everybody in my family once go to Australia and New Zealand for 6 weeks with one carry-on and a little personal.
It's fantastic.
So we're going to show you how you could do that. That may not be the way that you like to travel, but if you're sick of lugging big bags around, we can show you how to be comfortable. So we're going to have travel, food, wine. We've got a on-site show coming up at a distillery.
That is going to be phenomenal.
And we have only a limited number of spaces, so keep your eyes peeled for this, because guests that are in this, well, you can come from anywhere you want to. Tyson, I think, was threatening to come from Australia for that one because it was right up his alley.
And when Tyson shows up, it is a threat.
It's a threat before and when it happens. And so we've got all sorts of things to help you put your life in top form, to be a better gift giver, to be able to do travel in new and better ways, to have more, just more in your life of what you want.
We're going to have a special guest fitness episode.
Oh, coming up maybe
in a few weeks.
Yeah, two or 3 weeks out. Yeah, there's a and the two of you have some really incredible things to show people. I think you're going to maybe have 2 episodes.
I think we're going to take over for 2 episodes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff coming up. But each and every one of these could be a show of their own. So remember, one of the other things we want you to do as well as liking and loving, which is awesome, is once we get done today, it is really, it is great for us when you share it. So when we post this, then by all means, just share this with friends, family members, business associates, anybody who wants these kinds of topics. You could share it on your wall or send it to somebody. What's that one say?
Brown liquor.
Brown liquor. But yeah, there'll be a brown liquor show.
Yeah.
Actually, that particular distillery does whiskey, gin, and vodka, I think.
Oh, very
and
nice.
rum. So
Very
we'll get to see and talk a little bit about how each of those are produced.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are coming, there will be samples. So, and we're going to have some sponsors. So you may be able to drink on somebody else's dime, which I'm imagining is going to let the screen comes up.
Yeah.
So, a couple of things that people don't spend enough time thinking about, and this helps you to be more persuasive. We're going to talk about these 4, just a minute or 2 on each one. How you show up, demonstration, discovery, and, well, we'll leave out manipulation. We'll do these 3. So, how you show up. What this means is a little different in different contexts. So, for example, in the book I was mentioning, Subliminal by Leonard Mlodinow, that Larry sent me a signed copy of from the author. And by the way, let's talk about how persuasive that was. Larry is permanently in my good graces because he knew I was super interested in this topic. Tracked down the author, either met him or sent him this book that he bought for me and said, could you personalize it to Dave Freeze? And then, I don't know, may have even coached the guy a little bit, because let's look at what Larry got him to write in here. A true master of persuasion and communication, to Dave Freeze, a true master of persuasion and communication from Leonard Mlodinow.
Wow.
So that's a pretty cool gift that Larry gives me. I'll never, forget that.
Right. So
he took a few extra minutes of his time and did something that had a phenomenally persuasive effect.
Right.
So this book discusses how you show up, but this is how Larry showed up, by doing something that was just extraordinary, that only took him a tiny bit more time. But one of the examples they discuss here is that they put people in an fMRI, functional MRI machine, and they would give them a glass of $15 a bottle red wine to taste and a glass of $90 a bottle red wine to taste. Well, what they found was not totally unexpected, which is that the $90 bottle of wine caused the pleasure centers of the brain to really light up.
Now, did they know it was a $90 bottle?
They did. They were told in advance. But here's the thing. It was not a $90 bottle of wine. It was the same wine both times. So this isn't, though, that they talked themselves into it. They actually physiologically had the reaction
response,
as though it was a different product, simply because they were told it was something different.
Right.
Likewise, in here, they gave people a yellow box, a blue box, and a yellow and blue box. I might be wrong about the colors, of laundry detergent. And they asked them to use them 1 a week and describe the qualities and how different they were. And so people, by a vast margin, so like 80 or 90%, chose, I'm making this part up, the blue and yellow box.
Right.
Well, they all had the same product inside them. So the packaging in this case mattered very much. So you can do this, though, in a way that's disconcerting to people. So when I first started practicing law, you had to show up because the firm required you to in a blue or black suit with a white shirt and a red tie.
Right.
And that's kind of what people expected the lawyer to look like. I added a flamboyant pocket square because there was nobody that said you couldn't do that.
Right.
So I had to appear in a certain way because I wasn't running my own firm at that point. I worked for a 206-year-old law firm.
Wow.
So they earned the right, I guess, to tell people they were going to look a certain way. But I added something to that changed that. And I also wrote a paper that I would give out to my clients on a topic that showed I knew what I was talking about. So I showed up in a different way than everybody else that did what I did. So how you show up is using that grease slide that Alex talks about,
Right.
which we've talked about in several examples already. I need to make a copy because triggers the grease slide. Here, we're showing up in a way like now, when a lawyer shows up wearing a $4,000 suit, people have a different reaction to that than they did in 1985 when I passed the bar.
Right.
So now it may be important to show up looking a little different, to put people both at ease and to say that you have expertise. So one of the things that I do, and you talked about this too, is I send some of the people that refer to me, like very high-end financial advisors, a hardbound book that I wrote on how affluent people benefit from trust and estates planning.
Right.
And I also send them an extra copy in case they've got a client that needs that wants to talk. So the client shows up with a hardbound book written by Brenda Geiger, who you know,
Yeah.
a lawyer from the West Coast, and from me. So that's probably more important. It's how I showed up before I showed up.
Right.
And so I have probably earned the right to wear, like, my usual uniform now is to show up in a pretty interesting jacket with a pocket square but an open collar.
Right.
Now, that's about to change. I don't know if they're there. No, I think I took them up. I just bought about 8 ties that are very flamboyant. So I'm returning to the tie. Why? Because the tie is almost extinct. So now I'm consciously showing up with something that people don't wear. I'm going back to 1985 again,
Right.
without the black suit, just like in a flamboyant page.
There's small details, but they create a key differentiation for you
Mm-hmm.
between, everybody's wearing business casual now, and Fridays in particular, everybody dresses down. At Dragon Gym, we all dress up.
Oh, I like
on
that.
Fridays. So everybody is coming from their professional life, work life, family life. It's Friday. People have kind of like ended the week already mentally, and they come into Dragon Gym and everybody's dressed up, and we've stepped up our game for the weekend. And it gives people a very positive experience. And we found that now our customers, parents that are bringing their kids to the gym, are also dressing up a little nicer
Nice.
to come in.
So this is how you show up and then how you keep showing up.
Right.
And both of them are an opportunity to surprise and to delight people. Another one that is often ignored is demonstration. So it's very hard with what I do for people to wrap their heads around it because it's not a thing. I'm getting them to think about what they want to happen, like both now and when they die, and then when their spouse dies, as far as their kids go.
And what you do is actually especially difficult, and Daniel Pink talks about it, is we literally don't see our 70-year-old or 80-year-old self as the same person.
Right, we do not.
And because we don't right now, we kind of base our decisions in a certain way. So if you are able to convince, somehow trick or convince me to realize that, oh, you at 70 and 80 is actually you, that will change my behavior.
Or another way to do it is to say, you're doing this with the hope that it's not going to get used until you're 80 or 90 years old. But what if you're also here because you're worried? What if something happened to the you right here making these decisions? And then when you say to people, you can always change this at any time. It's like a relief to them that this isn't the thing they're doing now that they're stuck with forever, with this being that they don't really know yet.
Right.
So that's an important one. So demonstration here, there are a couple of ways that we demonstrate both that we know what we're doing and we care about. So for example, if I see a photocopy that's off at an angle by a little bit, that I'll destroy that whole batch of them because the physical manifestation of what we do is the only thing that people see. But one of the things is, at some point, while we're discussing their estate planning, I'm going to say, ultimately, all that you've written or that I've helped you write that documents what it is that you want to happen. So now I've cast what they're doing in a different way. Is going to be put together and super well organized in this binder, and we show them this thing, and they can look through it and hold it in their hands, and we show them the papers that we're going to insert in that and what they do. So they have this physical thing.
Right.
We also demonstrate, this is part of how you show up and part of demonstration. We have, so people a lot of times want to have a memo. Who could be at their funeral? Who will they want invited? Is there music? All these sorts of things. Who gets what kind of thing? Who gets this snow person collection? Alex is probably getting ready to go for that. But One of the things that we do is we always have fresh flowers on the table, and we always have chocolates, and we serve people coffee, and it comes in on a nice tray. And so this is how you show up, how you continue, and demonstrating what it is that you do. Now, you have a much easier job of demonstration.
We really do, because what we're doing is, physical activity, for lack of a better word. And, so if our customer is the parent of these kids that we're teaching and training, they can see, over time, the improvement and the benefits that they're taking home. They're behaving well at school, but still, we have to demonstrate that in a very purposeful way, and we use belt testing to do that, right? So the kids are really learning and developing all along the way. It's not when they test, all of a sudden they've made this leap of improvement.
I mean, typically, by the time that, at least this was true when I was teaching and you were, I was teaching students for you, they weren't going to test till we knew they were ready to test.
Exactly.
And even if somebody made a mistake in the test, we already knew what they were capable of doing.
Correct. But the test is a demonstration for the student themselves, if it's a child or an adult, and the important relationships for that student. So if you're a child,
and don't get me wrong, by the way, we failed people in tests.
Yeah, I mean, when you have to fail someone, you have to fail them.
Sure.
It's not complete just like orchestration for show, but the point being is there has to be those pieces of your product where you can show or demonstrate the value, and this is where we get in trouble, because that value, because it's our product and we're the expert, is inherent to us, right? So the value of what you're doing, it's inherent, like all the work and the, 30 years, 32 years that you've been practicing at this point, all that value is built in. But if you just emailed somebody a PDF of all these docs, they're not going to feel it.
Right.
Right. And if I tell people, oh, look, you've been training for 3 years, here's your black belt. They have earned that black belt, but they don't feel it because they haven't gone through that ritual of testing for their
I was
black
just
belt.
going to use that same word. I think we're going to end today and not talk about discovery or ritualized promotion, which are two very, very, very institutionalized ways of becoming persuasive. So discovery, just to let you know, is where in meeting after meeting, I'll go all of a sudden, wait a second, I just thought of something for you. It's not as though we discover it, we usually do because everybody's different. And ritual is where people are knighted and they're bestowed belts and all of these things that happen. We're going to hold those for another day because we, believe it or not, have gone for an hour and 5 minutes, which seems insane. Loved spending time with you guys. Oh, Laura Bernitsky, hey, welcome. She's in Kansas City as well, I believe, with Alex. So that's very exciting. Thank you, Laura, for coming. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for the liking and the loving. Remember, in a minute or two, we're going to post this, and we would love it if you would hold on long enough just to go share that on your own wall or with somebody you love and you care about or who would benefit from this. So fantastic being with you, sir, as always.
Another fun episode.
Great. Take care, everybody.